Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Founders Table. This podcast is focused on conversations with current founders to deconstruct their lessons and tactics in order to help you build your own startup. If you like this podcast, don't forget to rate and subscribe in your podcast app. This will keep you up to date on latest episodes, as well as help others find out about the show. Today, my guest is Aakash Shah, founder of Wyndly, a startup that helps people permanently fix their allergies from home. Aakash came up with the idea as a result of suffering from allergies during COVID-19 when cooped up at home with his family cats. This led him to co-found Wyndly with his cousin, Dr. Manan Shah, in 2020 and go through Y Combinator as part of the Winter 21 batch. Before Wyndly, Aakash worked on growth across a number of startups. In today's episode, we talk about how Wyndly provides a permanent fix for allergies through allergy immunotherapy. We talk about the dual challenge of building in healthcare as well as the consumer market. And we talk about leveraging AI to do more with a small team. Now, without any further ado, I give you Aakash. Welcome to Founders Table. Excited to have you on.
Yeah, excited to be here, Kevin. Thank you.
So, for people that aren't familiar with Wyndly, how would you describe it? What is it that you guys do?
Absolutely. So I'm Aakash. I'm the CEO and founder of Wyndly. And what we do is we are going to fix your allergies forever, right? Most people, they're out there, they're sneezing, they have itchy nose or itchy eyes, and they don't really know what's causing them. And we will figure it out. We'll train your body so that it stops having those allergic reactions. And then you're going to be able to have decades and decades of relief without ever thinking about your allergies.
So that seems incredibly compelling as somebody that has seasonal allergies. Usually, like my first thought in these kind of offers is like, what's the catch? Or like, how are you able to do this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is actually a treatment which is used across the US, and it's called allergy immunotherapy. But it's something that was really hidden behind. First, you had to go see your primary care doc. Then you had to try out antihistamines. Then you would get your referral to your allergist. And then you'd finally go and see your allergist, which could take like 3 to 4 months of wait. And they would say, okay, we can treat you. We can get you on immunotherapy, but you have to do it in the office, right? And so millions and millions of people were doing this, and they were coming in every week for years and years and years to train their bodies and desensitize their bodies to the allergens. What's really changed that lets us do this now and today is, first, people are comfortable with telehealth. They want stuff shipped to their home. They want healthcare to happen in their house or on their phone. So now you don't necessarily need physical space. You don't need all the rent and costs that comes with a physical space. And then the second part is it's not immediate. It takes a few weeks to really start seeing the results. And we live in a world where people don't always want to wait those few weeks to see those results.
Got it. And what gave you the idea or to start Wyndly? What's kind of the origin story there?
Yeah, man. I think it just was something I personally experienced. So I was a miserable allergy sufferer, right? I had a medicine cabinet full of Claritin and Flonase and Zyrtec and Benadryl, and I was just taking all these medicines and still not feeling great. Like I would still have allergy symptoms, but it would take me from like being basically unable to breathe at all to being able to breathe out of one nostril. And I was like, oh, this is great. Eventually I learned that most people actually can breathe out of both nostrils. Oh my goodness. Breathe out of both nostrils all the time. They can just breathe. They don't have to think about it. And when I learned that, I was like, that's not fair. I want that to be my life. What do you mean you can breathe all the time and you don't feel like you're always gasping for air? And as I tried to go through this journey of like talking to my primary care doc, getting a referral to an allergist, going and seeing them, it took months and months and months. And I was like, there just has to be a better way. And the way I found this better way is I just talked to a bunch of doctors, because I realized that like if you go to an academic center like Johns Hopkins or Stanford, they give you a different treatment and a treatment that they can actually send you home with. I was like, that's weird. Why can't I get that myself? Why is it only if I go to a academic center? Talk to a few doctors, and basically what came out is, yeah, insurance can get real nasty when it comes to this stuff, and doctors are there to treat patients. They're not there to like optimize insurance payouts. So I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then I made it my life goal to get this treatment into as many people's hands as possible so that allergies don't need to exist. That's my opinion.
And if I read your history correctly, you started the company with your cousin. Um, and you hear stories about, I think, like cautionary stories about doing business with your family. Um, I guess, is that something that you considered when you guys started, and how has it been going?
I mean, I think Stripe's like an incredibly successful startup, and that's two brothers, right?
Sure.
So I think it is a very different relationship when you're related to your co-founder. There's no walking away, right? You just have to fight through it all. Um, where I think, if your co-founder is just purely a work relationship, sometimes the co-founders might be willing to let that relationship deteriorate. It is one thing that we've done very well is we both kind of have our areas that we excel in, and that like we're the boss when it comes to that area. He's a doctor. He runs the medicine. He runs the patient experience. I'm an engineer and marketer, so I handle the, tech. I handle the growth, and then we share the rest, right? So it's very clear to like everybody who owns what and who's going to defer to who for what. But I know that wasn't easy. We had to get there.
I guess in that vein, was there anything um, that was either easier or harder because you were working with family?
Yeah, I think one thing that was really difficult initially is we don't have a shared background of work culture. He comes from medicine. I come from uh, like startups and engineering. So things that are very obvious and easy to me when it comes to like how you work at a startup were foreign to him. And then things which were obvious to him on like how you run a medical company were completely foreign to me. And so it was really difficult to kind of translate and combine those two cultures, both work cultures, but also just like how you communicate, how you use email, um, like what can be asynchronous versus synchronous, all that type of stuff. That was really tough, but we got through there. What went really well though, is like we had a shared like familial culture background. And so we kind of knew what was important to us, like as individuals. And we also knew that, like, look, at the end of the day, if we didn't behave, our moms were going to scold both of us. So, that's a risk we didn't want to take.
There it is. It's the mother that they're always, that's where the buck stops.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, I know there's probably like hundreds of things if you think back to like, how do you bridge that gap between kind of the work context and how do you work together? Does anything stand out in terms of like being like a big initial unlock? Is it like, I don't know, like getting together on Slack or like establishing some sort of like check-in once a week? But anything along those lines of like specific routines or like tooling or just processes that really helped you in the beginning?
Yeah, I think it forced us to be very intentional about how we did our work. I've done projects with other engineers where it's like you automatically default to Slack and you're automatically using GitHub, and like people understand like the work process and they kind of default to what they agree with. What this By having to be intentional and having to build it piece by piece, we really broke down like, okay, what is important to us when it comes to communication? What does need to be synchronous versus asynchronous? What do we need to do on the phone versus on email versus on Slack? Uh, and then you also kind of see it's like, well, maybe Akash isn't the best on email, so maybe he's better on Slack, or maybe my co-founder Manan prefers to talk on the phone. So you also kind of just meet that middle ground, and then you kind of what it really allowed us to do was like say, okay, so this is how we do our work and accomplish our work, and how do we kind of, when we needed to start hiring, it was very clear like, okay, we need people who are able to be as adept on phone as they are on Slack and on email, and they communicate very thoroughly and competently, because we're not going to be able to walk over and just tap someone on the shoulder. And because when you talk to a patient on the phone, the way you approach them is different than the way you approach, your coworker who is sitting next to you. So all those things we were able to kind of lay out very early, and it helped as we started scaling the team because we knew what was important to us.
Got it. Um, in regards to scaling the team, at what point were you comfortable in starting to scale? How did you know it was the right time to start going?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like, I don't know what the perfect number of founders is. Uh, it I think it's like probably more than one and probably less than five. But it also probably depends, like based on like what type of company you're building. And the reason for that is just like there's just so much work at the very beginning when you're just trying to get something completely off the ground. Um, and it just helps to have like an extra person around to say like, okay, I'm going to focus on like doing sales today. Can you focus on like handling our customer support, and vice versa? The way we hire today is we wait until it is incredibly obvious that we have about 70 to 80% worth of work. Like that person will be like 80% utilized from the moment they come on. And so the team is like almost buckling under the weight of that, right? So when we started, for us, we were a consumer company. We're a doctor's office. People are able to email us or call us or whatever. We just needed someone to man the front desk and say like, okay, you're calling us. You want to book an appointment? Let me help you. Okay, you sent us an email. You want to know where your order is? Let me help you. And that was our first hire just because like that started eating up so much time. And we had enough work around that we could bring someone on. Yeah.
Got it.
And we still think about it that way. I think what's nice is like when it's at 80%, which is a pretty high amount, the team also starts investing in systems to make their work more manageable. And so it kind of ends up building a culture, which is instead of like people first, where instead of scaling through people first, you scale through like processes and systems and like technology. And I think that's like the right incentive, because once you have a team of like 50 people and it's built into the culture that like, oh, we'll just always hire that marginal person, that's really hard to untrain.
Right. And in terms of building those systems, um, have there been any particular systems that have been effective at kind of scaling out the work? I don't know if it's just like SaaS tools or AI or something else, but how have you been able to kind of leverage existing tools?
Yeah, I mean, that's what all the like you start with everything in your email, and then you're like, okay, maybe we can't manage 1,000 customers in my email, and we need some other database or some CRM. When we first started, I have a software engineering background too, and I know that it can be really dangerous to just like build without fully understanding the spec. And when you're so early, the spec changes so much. I think the perfect middle ground is to use a no-code tool like Zapier, and then a flexible kind of database slash spreadsheet like Airtable or Notion, right? You can do so much with that. So we probably got to our first few hundred customers just with that before we were like, okay, wait, we probably are going to need a real database. But the amount of learning that happens as you go from 0 to 10 to 100 customers, you really realize that like, okay, you just start to understand the problem space a lot better. Does that follow?
Yeah.
And from like implementing a bunch of things that broke over and over, we started realizing it's very important to just like write down what needs to happen, automate bits and pieces of it with no code. And then finally, when you reach the end of that no code, is to automate like possibly even more of it with LLMs or with just like, I don't know, normal programming that is deterministic. Or like, oh, maybe we do need a database because these data pulls are taking like 7 hours a week. I would say once we realized that we were going to need to do a lot of like sales online, we immediately picked Shopify. Shopify is the best e-commerce platform for a reason. It's very good at what it does. If you think you're going to need an online store, just use Shopify. And then Zapier and Notion were kind of like our initial stack.
Got it. Um, so, so you guys are in this interesting intersection of both health and direct to consumer, and to me, I find both to be like very hard spaces to get in. I think healthcare with all the regulation, and then consumer with all the uh, essentially competition. Um, what um, I guess like what challenges did you have to overcome to like work in these markets, or how are these markets different from, if you think of like compare that to like a B2B startup, what are additional challenges that you face when you build in the space that you guys are in?
Yeah, I think every startup has a challenge, like has challenges in their space. It's just a question of like, what are you good at, and can you like is what the founder good at a match for what the company needs, right? So this is probably why you see a lot of I don't know, Y Combinator founders who were software engineers building stuff for software engineers because they understand what software engineers need, but they also understand how software engineers buy, right? Because it's not enough to just have you need to have like a product that people want to use, but you also need to have a channel that people will buy it through. Um, and so I think that's really important. We in healthcare, the reason we're at this intersection of healthcare in consumer and healthcare is like people used to buy healthcare by going to the doctor and like listening to the specialist. Now they buy healthcare by researching online, maybe consulting with a doctor, maybe consulting with multiple doctors. It's a lot more informed and it's a different sort of decision. And so that, that change in consumer behavior provides an opportunity. And that's why you see these gigantic direct consumer telehealth companies like Ro, Hims, Wyndly, Curology. It's because that was a new channel and it was a new channel opportunity. One thing, look, I didn't have a direct consumer background when I started. And we very quickly realized that like every direct consumer startup ends up growing through paid channels. So if we want to be a big direct consumer startup, we're probably going to need to use paid channels. And that was a change for how we were kind of initially thinking about it. Initially we thought, look, we'll sell to doctors and that'll get us a lot of growth. We'll use SEO, that'll get us a lot of growth. And all those things are true. But if like, as a startup, we don't have a choice to ignore the most successful channel for our buyers and our industry. So I think it's very important for founders to kind of sit down and say, okay, I have a product, but how is this product bought? Do people Google for it? Is it through Facebook ads? Is it through B2B sales, like where the people are just cold emailing? Is it like a super influencer on LinkedIn? Maybe it's even conferences, right? So it's really important to kind of figure out what the channel is for you. And then you kind of need to own that channel to be very successful.
Absolutely. I think in a large part, the way that I view product market fit is finding the right channel that you can consistently sell in. In terms of Windley, what has that channel been for you? Have you found a right channel or channels that work particularly well?
Yeah, I mean, we have a mix of channels that really drive our business. One thing we did understand about our customer at the very beginning is this product needs a lot of education. So we're going to have to create a lot of that educational material. Okay, so once you have a lot of educational material, well, it's organic content. So what is going to pick up that organic content? So we knew we needed to do a lot of education. We knew it was going to be organic content. So that means like it's going to be like social media, like YouTube, TikTok, SEO. Well, let's make sure that the content we make is a good fit for those channels, right? So instead of doing like 45-minute one-on-one calls with patients, which you actually can do if you want to, what we found out is many patients would prefer to have 1 or 2 minute short form videos that they kind of get to swipe through and kind of know that it's there so that they can look it up when they want to, right? So that worked out really well for us. And we kind of approached that just from like what is our need and what channel will fit our need. Eventually, when we kind of hit the ceiling there, we realized that, okay, what are we able to actually put the gas, like, where can we find growth instead of just capturing growth? And that came out to like B2B sales, where we're partnering with doctors' offices to turn them into allergists, enable them to do allergy testing, enable them to do allergy treatments, and paid social, where it's just like people hear about Wyndly, they get excited, they want to try it out.
In terms of partnering with doctor offices, that is something that I know for myself. I know basically absolutely nothing about. How did you even start that process, and what is kind of like the incentives for doctors to like partner with you?
Yeah, I mean, we started the process because my co-founder is a doctor. He had doctor friends, and he was like, "Hey, look, this is something I'm doing. Would you want to offer allergy testing to your patients?" And the reason is like doctors want to help their patients. This might sound crazy to a lot of people, but doctors want to help you. They got into like they went through all of that schooling, they went through all of that medicine because genuinely they like helping people. It is a very frustrating fact about the human body that sometimes one person isn't going to have all the answers. And then there's a very frustrating fact about the American healthcare system that getting to the person who does have the answers might take a really, really long time. So we did something. So what basically happened is my co-founder hit up his friends. He was like, look, if you want to try this out for yourself before you start recommending it to your patients, we'd love to get you on. And we had a few doctors who were like, yeah, I'll try it out. They worked with us for a year and a half as patients themselves. And they were like, wow, this is really successful. I like how this guy is running his business. I like how he's treating his patients. I will refer my patients to him because I know that they're going to get a good experience too. Right. And so the incentive for the doctors is, instead of sending a patient away and the patient is frustrated without knowing what to do next, they're able to say, oh, you came into me, you have really bad allergies. I'm going to send you to Wyndly. Just work with them. They will fix your problem. And if it doesn't work out, they even have a money back guarantee.
And we touched upon it earlier, but American healthcare is very much tied to insurance and what insurance will cover and won't cover. How does insurance play into Wyndly? Do you guys take insurance, or is it pay out of pocket? How does that work?
Yeah, we take insurance today. When we started, it was just too complicated, right? And you can't worry about doing it right when you start. You just kind of got to get off the ground. So when we started, it was all cash pay. We do take insurance today. What we find is, we've tried to make this, we always try to make it as easy as possible for our customers and our patients. And so people will be like, hey, do you take Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, or do you take Kaiser Permanente? We'll run their numbers and we'll be able to say, look, if you do it through insurance, it's going to, like, you need to hit your deductible, which might be like $6,000-$7,000, and then it'll get fully covered. Or you can just do it through cash and it's going to be a few $100s per year, right? So which do you want to choose? And many people, they like being able to make that decision, and they like being told, oh, even if I used insurance, it will be actually more expensive because of how confusing insurance is, right? And Wyndly has actually found a way of making it more affordable without going through insurance. So I would say it's like we have a pretty healthy split between people who use insurance and people who don't use insurance. But yeah, I mean, we take insurance. For us, it's more about making healthcare as easy as possible and giving people the information they need to make the decisions they want to make, right? So we don't try and hide anything after the fact. You get all the information up front.
Yeah, two thoughts about that. It's like I regularly see how expensive or more expensive treatments and medications can be on insurance versus off insurance. I think that can be a whole episode for another time. But the second part is, you started off not just taking cash because it was the easy thing to do. What is the process of actually getting covered by providers? Do you need to reach out to each one individually, or is there some master list? But what is that process like?
Yeah, so there's service. So like once you're a provider in an office, you basically like say, I exist. Now I would like to get in network with insurances. So you have to go through what's called credentialing. And, basically you're applying to an insurance company and saying, hey, I want to be a part of what you do. Here's all my information. Here's all the patients that I've seen. Here's how many patients I expect to be sent. Just like all the information you would need to apply to their network. And they'll say yes or no. And sometimes it'll take a long time to say yes or no. And during that time, you'll see these doctors are just writing their claims anyway, because you kind of have to. I think what's really tough is doctors are in this weird space where like they want to provide care, but they don't know if they're going to get paid for anything because insurance doesn't tell them if they're going to get paid for months. And then patients end up getting frustrated because insurance sometimes comes after them, or like sometimes insurance requires the doctors to come after the patients first before they even try paying anything. So it just feels like, you know, the incentives are so off kilter across everything that's just like what really causes a lot of the pain in the healthcare system. But to bring it back to your point on like, well, how do you get credentialed? That's basically it. There's service that you say you're a doctor. So first you get a medical license, then you open a practice, and then you apply for credentialing.
It sounds easy in the way that you put it. Get a medical license,
I
open
mean,
an office,
the
do some
steps are
steps.
clear. The steps are clear. They're relatively difficult. But like, you know, you got to think about it. There's thousands of new doctors entering the American workforce every year. They all have to be able to take insurance. So it's a process that's known. It's just a process that's incredibly painful. And what also makes it painful is like it's built for a doctor with one practice in one state, right? Whereas like we're in all 50 states. So that adds just a ton of complexity. So like the system, like the insurances are just not set up for these sorts of like national telehealth practices.
It almost makes me think of like a great startup idea is building that infrastructure behind that. I'm sure a lot of people are going through that process now.
There's a few good startups out there. One's called Medallion. I think they've raised a quite a good amount. I think another one's called like Aparo. It ends up being a weird mix of a services business and a software business. Now, to be fair, with what LLMs are up to nowadays, we might see services margins start approaching like pure SaaS margins. So, right, because you have the ability to take like relatively complex inputs and standardize them into like nice outputs. So maybe they're good businesses. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess on that topic, has Wyndly incorporated language models or AI into kind of your workflows or services?
Yeah, we use actually a ton of LLMs because what we realized is, well, first off, what was funny is I think when ChatGPT 3.5 released and they started doing like, they started citing places on the web, one of our patients sent me something which is like, hey, I was trying out ChatGPT. I asked it an allergy question and like Wyndly was actually cited. And that's like really cool, right? That's like a really high signal that the content we're putting out is like very valuable. And at the time, all that content was handwritten and reviewed by my doctor or like dictated by my doctor and then edited by a writer. And what we basically realized is like, wait, this is a ginormous corpus of knowledge that we've created ourselves. Yes, there's what we've published externally, but there's also a ton that we have internally. How can we leverage this? And so what we've started doing is, I don't know what the proper term is, and you might have to tell me, but basically I think we have started just, we do generation, but it's like super powered by all the knowledge that we have. And then we also like are very careful to avoid any hallucinations. And then all of our generation is reviewed by a human before it's sent out. So we basically use generation in our customer communications, but it's all reviewed by a human right now before it's like, you know, sent to anyone. And that, you know, what it really means is we've been able to scale my co-founder's knowledge. Because before, like maybe he was limited about being able to answer like one customer question every 10 minutes. Now he's able to review a customer question every minute, right? And it just allows us to be much more accessible to customers and give them the answers they want. But we still keep the human in the loop. I think it's really important. I think it's retrieval augmented generation. Sorry. I built it. I don't know like what the hype phrases are.
Yep. I think RAG is what you're referring to. Yeah, I think I see it pretty commonly right now. It's just the you keep the human in the loop, you use Guide, and it's not fully automated, but you can vastly uh, increase the leverage of like single like workers and individuals, which sounds
Yeah,
like is a case for you guys. Um, I have more questions, but we
of
are
course.
running close to the end of the show, and I want to make sure we have time for the closing questions. And so I'll transition to that. And the first question that I like to ask founders is if you were to give essentially advice to new founders, or maybe yourself when you first started, what would you tell them about building a startup? And maybe in your case specifically in this kind of either medical or consumer field?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the like very vast advice is like don't read about fundraisers and don't worry about your competitors. That's like a very it's like a very trite, not a trite thing, but it's like a quippy thing I can say because it's very true. It ends up being like a lot of wasted energy, basically, right? I used to really have like comparative envy when I would read about like such and such company has raised $10 million for whatever. Well, you know what? It's been 3 years and now that company's out of business and we're still here chugging along, doing really well. So don't like that. Those emotions, the emotions which are generated from reading headlines, just aren't worth it. Um, and then the other thing would be like just keep your head down and iterate quickly and learn very quickly because when you're doing something that you don't know how to do or which there might not be a playbook for, you the only thing you have is how quickly you kind of move through and learn new stuff. And that actually has two benefits. The first one is just like it reduces the risk of committing to the wrong direction because you're like, oh, I'm going to try something new. Well, I try something new every 3 days. So if I'm going the wrong way, it's not a huge cost to me. And the second one is it actually you're compounding more regularly, right? So even if you're getting a little bit better, you're getting a little bit better in a compounding fashion, which grows better than like committing to always being right all the time and growing in a linear fashion. So, um, yeah, one of the first things we did is move from like a 2 week sprint to a 1 week sprint cycle, which might sound bonkers, but it actually worked out really, really well for us because now we get, 52 things done in a year instead of whatever half of 26, right? That's a lot.
It is, and with each iteration, it's kind of like you said, you get to course correct. You get so many more shots on goal. Because, like, I think a lot of startup work is minimizing the unknowns or the unknown unknowns. It's learning what you need to do, and so the more shots you have on goal, the more of the picture that you will be able to unveil in terms of
Yeah.
getting to product market fit. Um, and maybe this is a good segue from like the uh, comparative envy and like not kind of focusing on fundraising. But when you think of success, is there anyone or anything that comes to mind?
Success for the company or success for me individually?
This is targeted more towards yourself individually, but you can answer that question however it suits you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very important to me to like know why I got into it because I don't like while doing a startup might be a good way to have like external concepts of success like riches or credentials or press mentions. Those external measures aren't going to drive you for long enough, aren't going to generate enough passion for you to put in the amount of work that's necessary, right? Like I have weeks where I'm doing like 10-hour days and then I'm also doing it on Saturday and Sunday. And I'm like, there is no other way I actually wanted to spend my time, right? Like, yes, like this new video game dropped, or yes, there was this party I could have gone to, but I'm just like really enjoying what I'm doing. I'm very motivated. So I think for me, success is being able to say, like, I'm able to do things that give me the most energy at all times, and I'm able to control my time doing that. That's the first level. The second level is like I'm able to put together a team of people who are able to do that. And together with all of our strengths, we're able to like solve a problem in the world that really, really matters, right? And allergies are a health issue that are affecting hundreds of millions of people. Yeah, it really matters to fix this, right? Yes, in my past, I used to, work at analytics companies, and people would be happy and people were paying a lot of money for it. But it's real in a different way when I get a message from a customer that's like, hey, I just adopted a cat, which was a lifelong dream because like you fixed my cat allergies. I'm just a lot more motivated. So I would say that's what success is for me. And
Yeah.
the byproduct of those three things that I laid out happens to be like a company, like it just so happens that a company that is financially successful is the best vehicle to accomplish what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. And as one of those hundreds of millions of people that are suffering from allergies, and also a user of Wyndly, I can attest that it is something that is very meaningful to like be able to do something about your allergies. Um,
Absolutely. Dude, I went
that
through it, so I love being able to breathe. I know that sounds so minor, but it's
Oh,
true.
not to me. When you talked about like breathing through a nostril, it's like I can breathe through my nose. Like that's a thing.
What?
Like,
That's what it's there for?
yeah,
I
no,
thought it was
life
just to
change.
look good.
Yeah, life changing. Um, when I guess on the flip side of, like working 10 hours a day on your company, like for a long time, if you find that you need to relax and just step away from, the day to day, how do you do that? How do you unwind?
Yeah, I think one thing which is really important for me is I do have an identity outside of myself as a founder and as a CEO of a company, right? I have an identity as a husband, I have an identity as a friend, and it is important to me to like say like, yes, I have carved out time for my family, I have carved out time for my friend. Like I have, basically, I'm saying like I have hobbies and other things that matter to me, right? So I actually think that acts as a counterbalance, and without that, I wouldn't be able to grind. So that's the first step. That's how you like create a system where you're able to grind regularly. The second part is like sometimes you are going to burn out and you have to recognize when it's happening and say, okay, cool. The same way a car in the F1 ends up going in for repairs. Uh, it's time to repair. It's time to like kind of take a break, do some maintenance, and then get back at it.
Makes
Or maybe
sense.
there should be like an Olympics athlete kind of metaphor here, but either way, it can't always be an on season. You have to have an off season.
Yep, uh, absolutely agree. My last question is, do you have any ask and offers of my audience? Anything you would want to request or anything you would like to make available?
Yeah, look, we are always looking to partner with more doctors to help them kind of, fix allergies for all of their patients. So please reach out if that's something you're interested in. If you yourself have very bad allergies, shoot me a quick email. I'll get you a discounted test kit so that you can get started. Because, like, while it's important to maintain margins, it's also very important to me that people don't ever have allergies. And then, I'm always looking to talk to anyone because I'm always learning something new. Connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to kind of break through the noise of my inbox. So I know that sounds crazy, but I've basically surrendered to my email inbox and am about to declare bankruptcy.
Email bankruptcy is the thing. Well, thank you so much for the offers. You can find everything in the show notes as well. Um, and otherwise, thank you so much for this conversation, Akash. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me on, Kevin. I really appreciated it.
Hey, just one more thing before you go. Thanks for listening to this episode of Founders Table. If you like the show, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also consider giving us a rating as it helps others find the podcast. You can find all episodes as well as more information about the show at founderstable.co. Until next time, stay hungry.